The narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, may soon become the epicenter of the next global crisis. Iran's latest threat to close this vital choke point has sent shockwaves through energy markets, military planners, and world capitals. If Tehran follows through, we're not just looking at a regional dispute. We're looking at a potential energy war that could ripple through every economy on Earth. Welcome to GeoFrontline, your source for global strategy, military affairs, and geopolitical reality. Today, we're breaking down the escalating crisis in the Persian Gulf, what's really behind Iran's warning, and why the United States and its allies are already preparing for a showdown that could change the balance of power in the Middle East. So, let's dive in. The Strait of Hormuz is more than just a strip of water between Iran and Oman. It's the world's most important oil artery. Every single day, tankers carry over 17 million barrels of oil, roughly 20% of global consumption through this passage. Add to that the massive volumes of liquefied natural gas from Qatar, and you have the lifeline of Asia, Europe, and beyond. Any disruption here means energy prices could double overnight, and economies could plunge into chaos. Iran knows this. And that's why the Strait has always been its ace card in the high-stakes game with the West. This latest threat came after Washington slapped fresh sanctions on Iran's oil exports, targeting its already fragile economy. Tehran's parliament didn't just issue a symbolic protest. They passed a motion calling for immediate preparation to block all shipping to nations they claim are acting aggressively toward Iran. And if history tells us anything, this is not an empty bluff. Let's rewind. In the 1980s, during the so-called tanker war in the Iran-Iraq conflict, the Strait became a deadly arena where mines, missile strikes, and sabotage turned commercial shipping into legitimate military targets. The U.S. responded with Operation Earnest Will, escorting Kuwaiti tankers under the American flag and engaging directly with Iranian naval forces. Fast forward to 2019. Iranian forces seized the British tanker Stena Impero, and tensions reached boiling point after the downing of a U.S. drone. Washington didn't pull the trigger for war. The message was clear. The Strait is a red line. So what makes 2025 different? 3 things. First, Iran's alignment with Russia and China has emboldened its foreign policy. With Russian oil under Western sanctions and Chinese energy demands at historic highs, Tehran believes it has backup from powerful partners who want to see U.S. influence in the Gulf diminished. Second, the war in Ukraine has already tightened global energy supply chains. Any shock in the Gulf would hit already strained markets, putting the West in an extremely vulnerable position. And third, Iran's domestic politics. Facing protests, economic decline, and rising dissent, the regime sees an external confrontation as a way to rally nationalist support at home. But here's the question: could Iran actually pull it off? On paper, Iran has the tools. Hundreds of small fast-attack craft, advanced mines, shore-based anti-ship missiles, and drones capable of swarming oil tankers. The Revolutionary Guard Navy specializes in asymmetric warfare, meaning they wouldn't go toe-to-toe with the U.S. Navy in open battle, but instead harass, disrupt, and exhaust American forces. Yet, closing the strait for more than a few days would be an enormous challenge. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, based in Bahrain, along with allied navies from the UK, France, and regional partners like Saudi Arabia are trained for exactly this scenario. Modern mine-clearing ships, surveillance drones, and naval patrols are all part of the Gulf's daily security routine. Still, even a short disruption would cause oil futures to skyrocket, and that's exactly the leverage Tehran is counting on. Washington knows this, and the Biden administration has already deployed additional carrier strike groups and announced joint exercises with Gulf allies. Publicly, the U.S. is framing this as ensuring freedom of navigation. Privately, military planners are mapping out how to neutralize Iranian missile batteries and secure the strait within hours if needed. But here's where it gets tricky. Because an operation to reopen the strait wouldn't just be about removing mines or sinking patrol boats. It could escalate into full-scale strikes on Iranian territory, and that's where the risk of regional war becomes real. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Israel, all regional rivals of Iran, would likely back U.S. action. But the Kremlin has already warned against provocations near Iranian waters. And Beijing has called for restraint while quietly increasing naval patrols in the Arabian Sea. In other words, this crisis has the potential to draw in every major power on the planet. And while the military calculus is one part of the equation, the economic stakes are just as high. Imagine crude oil prices hitting $200 per barrel. Imagine the ripple effects from the cost of gasoline in Los Angeles to food prices in London to factory shutdowns in Japan. This is not just a Gulf issue. It's a global economic earthquake waiting to happen. So, will Iran go through with it? Most analysts believe Tehran will push brinkmanship to the edge, harassing ships, staging inspection seizures, and planting the threat of closure without actually sealing the strait completely. Why? Because a total closure would cross America's ultimate red line and invite overwhelming retaliation. Still, even limited disruptions serve Iran's purposes, reminding the world that they hold a knife to the throat of global trade. The next few weeks will be decisive. If U.S. naval deployments continue to increase, if oil markets start pricing in the risk, and if Iran's rhetoric shifts from threats to action, we may be on the verge of the most serious Gulf confrontation since the 1980s. For now, the eyes of the world and the radars of every warship in the region are locked on the Strait of Hormuz. And the question is simple: who blinks first? Because in the chessboard of geopolitics, the narrow waters of the Gulf may decide the energy security of the entire planet. And that's the reality on the front line.